everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we've got my friend Gord's 1949 Ferguson TE20 in the shop for some hydraulic service. So what we can see here is this thing has got several leaks in the back end. Over the time that I've been fooling around with this thing, we've got pretty much everything from here forward straightened out and the electrical. The last thing we need to do is deal with the hydraulic system on this. So, you can see here, I think it's more on the other side, but there is some seepage around here. That's kind of normal on these because of, the crude castings and the age of it and whatnot. But we can fix this up a little bit. You can also see here at the back, the PTO seals on these things always weep, a little bit. They're going to weep over time. But this one is getting a little beyond weeping, and it's getting to the point where I would maybe call it marginally leaking. So, we're going to have the oil out of it anyway. Let's put a PTO seal in it. You can see here on this backing plate, the axle seal on this side is letting oil through. You can see here, this is an oldie, man. It's got drain plugs in the bottom of the hubs. You don't see that every day. We will take advantage of that because we're going to be putting in a set of Sure Seals, which will isolate the wheel bearings. That isolates the wheel bearings from the gear oil. So we will be replacing those plugs with a couple of grease fittings so we can pump grease into the rear wheel bearings. You can also see here, this, if you look down here, that little bung there, and this here, inside here, there's a tube, and that's what brings the hydraulic oil for the lift up from the pump to the lift cylinder in the lift cover. And right here, you can see this gasket is blown because you can see it's all dirty on either side and a clean spot where the oil runs down. And I've seen this thing. When it's got a load on the hitch, when you lift it up, it leaks pretty badly here. You can actually see the oil coming out. So we're going to pull the lift cover off. We're going to reseal everything and put it back together. Here's our stuff for this job. We've got a rear end gasket set. It also gives you the O-ring and the leather backing for the new style piston. I'm going to see what this thing has in it for a piston. It seems to work fine, but we'll go from there. It may still have the original 3 steel ring piston on there. If it does, I may put the piston in the lathe, modify the center groove, and put this in. We'll see. Here's a PTO seal. Here is a friction disc for the quadrant level, even though this one doesn't feel too bad. And these are our Sure Seals, and I'll kind of show you those and explain to you how they work when we get at it. This here is 18.9 liters or 5 US gallons of GL5 80W90 gear oil. Now, you can do a lot of reading on the internet, and the internet will scare you into thinking that you cannot put GL5 lube into these old tractors because it'll melt all the yellow metal in it and everything. That's hogwash. Where that story comes from is that the anti-shear additives in this stuff are so aggressive, they were causing problems with brass synchronizers in old manual transmissions in cars. We don't have that problem in this tractor. There are no synchronizers in the transmission, and the only brass in it is bushings in the pump, and they don't experience anywhere near the type of shear loads that this causes problem with. So you can go ahead and put this stuff in any of your old Ferguson or Ford tractors. And another thing that I did my research, the additive package in this thing is not as harmful to those parts as older formulations of this stuff. Take it for what it's worth. If you're still nervous about that, get the UTH or whatever they call it, Universal Tractor Drive Fluid. You can get that anywhere. It's a little more runny, and it'll be apt to leak a little bit more in old leaky tractors. But we're going to use this. I've used this in all my old machines for years and years and years and never had any problem. First thing we're going to do is jack it up, get the wheels off, get it on stands. Now, This is easy because in this situation, I know that these wheels do not have calcium in them. If your wheels have calcium in them, you need to be very, very, very careful because they will hurt you very badly or worse. They're heavy, they're unwieldy, and they will tip over on top of you and squash you like a bug. So please, 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 if you're messing with calcium-filled tires, either know what you're doing, handling them by hand, or use a crane. You know, you can reach around the wheel with a strap or something and use a crane. That's odd. That's an 8N center in there, so you won't be reaching a strap around there. They both have 8N centers. I've never noticed that before. Or these early Fergusons used 8N centers, but I don't think they did. I think they used the ones with the scallops in between the loops. Anyway, doesn't matter. It is what it is. Next step is to get these guys out, and I'm sorry I won't have the opportunity to show you any of my tricks for getting them out because, well, they all just came right out. But, yeah, you can have some fun with these guys. There's actually one missing on this side, but I think I've got some, so when we put it back together, we'll put the other one in. Then we can go ahead and get the drums off and see how bad the brakes are. You can see here, the left brake is not bad. There has been a little seepage past the seal, but for the most part, the shoes are relatively dry. You can see here the equalizer spring is broken. They are always broken. It's one of those things like kind of almost like an unnecessary part. It's like an appendix in the Ferguson tractor brakes. They're all running around with broken equalizers and the brakes still work. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. But on this side, look at the gooey, soupy mess. Oh, look, the equalizer's not broken on this side. Probably because the brake hasn't worked in years. Just caked with oil. But that's all right. We're gonna fix this. That's why we're in here. That's what we came to do. Now we're gonna take some stuff apart here. I want to get this thing drained. One of the drain plugs is up above Gord's trailer hitch here. So it's just held on to the bottom of the axle housing with 4 bolts. So we're gonna pull that down, get the trailer hitch off, and then we can pull the pipe plug out of the back and get this thing to start draining. So this thing is just like a Ford. It's got 3 plugs in the belly of it. There's one there in the bottom of the transmission, one there in the bottom of the oil pump, and one in the bottom of the differential. That's the one I pull out first. I kind of work my way from the back to the front because you get a little more controlled stream of oil coming out of there, and you can actually get most of it out. I usually let it run out of there, and then I jack up the front of it, and I'll get a lot of the oil to run from the front to the back and come out there. And while we're at it, we can pull out the PTO shaft, and we'll get some out of there too. All right, I've got that one and that one dripping now. And we'll let them drip for as long as it takes because we've got other stuff to do. Once they're done, I'll put the plug back in the transmission at least, and I'll move this pan back and we'll pull the plug out of the pump. What we're going to do now, we've got to get this overrunning clutch off. You need this on a Ferguson or a Ford because of the way the PTO is driven. If you want to run a bush hog with this, you have to have this. So you'll see this way, it lets the tractor drive the implement, but when you throttle down or push in the clutch, it freewheels and does not let the implement drive the tractor. Otherwise, you can push the brake, push the clutch, do all you want. This thing is going to drive you right off the end of your field and into the bush, and that's no good. So, to get this thing off, you just turn this around, and eventually we'll see there's a roll pin in there. Oh, there it is. It's right there. So we're going to get a long punch, and we're going to drive that out, and then this overrunning clutch will come right off the shaft. So you can see here's our pin. We've driven it out. There's the hole in the PTO shaft. Now, theoretically, even though this pin is a little bit banged up, it doesn't really have to be in tight in there because what really holds it in, there should be a grease fitting on either side of this, or at least a plug on one side and a grease fitting on the other. And that keeps the pin captured in there so it can't come out. Anyway, I'm still going to look and see if I've got a new pin because this one's buggered. Now, all we got to do is take out these 4 bolts and the PTO shaft will come straight out. And that's what it looks like when it comes out. You can get in trouble with these things sometimes, especially if you've got an aftermarket PTO shaft. They're a lot of times not really made with the same metallurgical standard. There's your $3 word for the day of the originals. And what'll happen, they get shocked and the spline will twist, and it will actually become caught in the hydraulic pump because the spline is twisted. So what you have to do is you have to take the lift cover off, cut the shaft with a grinder so you can get the shaft out, then lower the pump down, then work at getting the spline out. It happens, not all the time, but it occasionally happens. Anyway, we'll get to this later. We're going to change the seal that's in there. I'm happy, I think, to just let this guy drip. I got to go out later today, and I'm won't be at this thing too much more. So I'm going to put a third pan in the middle here, and we'll pull the pump plug, and we'll just let this baby drip overnight. Now we'll take the side covers off both sides. This one just has a dipstick in it. The one on the other side has the engagement lever for the PTO, but it's okay. It still just comes straight out. Here's what the covers look like when they're off. This one you can see here, it's got the lever to operate the sliding. It engages the, whatever you want to call that, the dog that engages and disengages the PTO. So now it's hard to see, but if we look down in there, we can see the top of the pump. This here is the drive shaft from the transmission that comes through. And when we get all this stuff down, actually, you know what? I'm not going to bother with this stuff right now. I'll show you once I've got the lift cover off. Now we can start working at getting the lift cover off. First, we need to get off the seat, and we need to get this pin out to separate this mechanism from the rocker. And we need to get these 2 pins out to separate the linkage from the cover. There we are. We've got all our pins out. Now, I don't really need to take these things off, but just to get them out of the way while we're working, for the couple of 1, 2, 3 nuts on each side, I'm going to pull them off and we'll put them aside and put them back on later. I also see that this guy here is kind of bent. So we'll see if we could straighten that out a little bit. We'll just warm it up with the torch and bend it back. Try to figure out exactly where it's bent. Oh yeah, you can see it's bent. It's bent right in here. That's easy to fix. We'll just heat it up red right here and bend it back over. Easy peasy. The ball on this arm was really stuck on that stud. And you can tell by looking at it, it's probably not been off of there since 1949. So anyway, there was a lot of torching involved to get it out. So seeing as how I've got the torch out, we're going to heat this up and straighten it out now. There we go. And I hope that's all the torching for the remainder of this job. We may have to get a little heat on there to get that apart, but that's just with the little hand map gas torch. You can see down here, this piece here that that the light is following up and down, that is the linkage for the control valve in the hydraulic pump. You'll see it, there's the other side of it over there. It's like a horseshoe shape, and the control valve has a T mechanism on it, and this engages both sides. So you just reach in there with your hand and unhook it from one side, and you'll unhook it from both sides. It'll make more sense once I get it out and show you all the parts, but for now we've got to unhook that before we can lift the lift cover off. Once the internal linkage is unhooked, we go around the perimeter of this thing and remove all the bolts. Don't remove these 4 nuts. That's what holds the lift cylinder to the underside of the lift cover. So now what we're going to do is try our best to get this thing busted free. And once we've done that, it's best if you've got a helper, because you need to lift this kind of straight up to get it out of here. And it's friggin' heavy. Or a little cherry picker if you've got one. Anyway, I'll be back once I've got that done. I'm not sure quite how I'm going to accomplish it. So there you go. We've got the lift cover off. You can see sort of how it works. I got to be careful where I grab it right now because that's still bloody hot from when I was torching it. So we'll leave it for a little bit later. But mostly what you can see here is this is where our leak was. This is the port that comes up from the pump. Let me go to the other side. There we go. You can see there's a steel tube pressed in, and that's fine. But where it was leaking, it was leaking around this gasket here and all running down the side of the tractor. So we'll be able to fix that while we're in here. Next thing we got to do, and I'm not going to do it now, I'm going to let this thing drip for a while, and then we'll take the bolts, all the bolts that come up from the bottom, and we'll lower down the hydraulic pump. I've gone ahead and just temporarily pushed the PTO shaft back in, so I can go around and take all the mounting bolts for the hydraulic oil pump out, and the pump won't fall out on the ground because the PTO shaft, you can see it right there, is going through it, and that'll hold it in. Once I've got all the bolts out, we'll put a jack underneath it, take the PTO shaft back out, and then we can lower it down. I've got all the bolts down. The pump fell down, the PTO shaft caught it. So now I've got my little transmission jack here. I've pushed the pump back up. We'll pull the PTO shaft back out and then lower down the pump. All right, got it. In the end, what was happening, it is so tight coming down through the hole in the casting. If it's like that, either way, one side to the other, it just locks up solid. So the easiest thing I found to do was get rid of the jack and just get under there with gloves and a couple of rags and jiggle it and wiggle it down by hand, and it came right out. I got it in the drain bucket because these things always end up with a lot of goop in the bottom of them. So you just put it in the drain bucket on its side overnight, and most of the goop will come out. So what we've got to do next is get everything cleaned up. We've got a bunch of gaskets to clean up. And then we can start having a look at some of this stuff and see what we're going to do with it. So that's the first part of our Ferguson tractor hydraulic system reseal. Over and done. It's all taken apart. Now we can carry on and start doing some actual work on this thing. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I'd like to thank you for coming around and tuning into our channel. Hope you'll come back and see what we're up to next time. And until then, this is Kevin saying so long from the Claremont Classic Garage.